Pressure test gauges must be set to a level that meets code and practical safety, typically higher than 1/5 of the gauge range, above 3 pounds per square inch, and at least 1 1/2 times the system working pressure to reliably find leaks. For choosing the exact pressure test level, first confirm the system working pressure and the applicable code or local authority having jurisdiction requirement. Use that as your baseline and multiply by 1 1/2 to get the minimum test pressure, but always check that this value is above 3 pounds per square inch and above 1/5 of the gauge range you will use. Select a gauge with a range where the expected test pressure sits past the 20% mark of the full scale, so readings are in a high-resolution portion of the dial, Hyporta, that reduces reading error and hysteresis. When testing natural gas or liquid petroleum propane lines, isolate appliances, cap openings with certified plugs, and use a calibrated test gauge rated for gas service. If the gauge is not recently calibrated, send it for calibration or use a calibrated digital manometer with traceable certification. Apply test pressure gradually using a hand pump with a regulator and watch for pressure decay over the required hold time specified by code ES. Record initial and final readings and calculate leak rate in inches of water column, or pounds per square inch per hour as required. For systems with long runs or multiple branches, apply sectional testing to isolate leaks quickly, pressurize a single branch, monitor, then move systematically to the next. This saves time and prevents masking small leaks in large volume systems. Use a soap and water solution or an approved electronic gas detector for pinpointing once a pressure drop is detected. Avoid relying on smell alone and do not use open flame methods. If you detect pressure loss, repressurize to test point, then perform a tracer test with a low concentration hydrogen or helium blend if permitted by code for tightness verification in critical systems. Always bleed test pressure to ambient pressure through a controlled vent or regulator before introducing fuel and document test certificate data, gauge serial, gauge range, test pressure used, duration, ambient temperature, inspector name, and corrective actions taken. One of the most common mistakes is choosing a gauge whose range places the test pressure below 20% of full scale, causing poor accuracy and false passes. Fix this by selecting a gauge where the test pressure reads in the upper 2/3 of the dial, or use a higher resolution digital manometer. One of the frequent issues is using a test pressure below 3 pounds per square inch or below 1 1/2 times the working pressure, which can miss slow leaks. Fix that by calculating 1 1/2 times the working pressure and then confirming it also exceeds 3 pounds per square inch and the 1/5 gauge rule before proceeding. One of the other top problems is not isolating or capping appliances and openings properly, leading to misleading pressure decay. Fix this with certified plugs, sectional isolation procedures, and step-by-step documentation that proves the tested segment was fully isolated. BigHomeProjects.com lists vetted local contractors who regularly perform gas line pressure testing to code, so homeowners can find technicians who understand the 1/5 gauge rule, the 3 pounds per square inch minimum, and the 1 1/2 times working pressure requirement. The directory also helps contractors get work by connecting them with local jobs, letting them showcase certifications, calibrated equipment capabilities, and pressure test reports to win homeowner trust.